Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Research, Recovery, and Reskill webinar, number 5, Leading Through Technology, Innovation, and Change Management. I'm Susan Vernon Devlin, Manager of Communications and Marketing for Rosen College of Hospitality Management, and I will be your moderator today. Your panel today will be hosted by Arthur Huang. First, a bit of housekeeping. Attendees, we will not be using the chat feature or the raise your hand feature for this webinar. We will use the Q&A feature. So any comments or questions that you have, please place them in the Q&A feature as we go through the webinar so that you don't forget your question. And at the end of the webinar, after Arthur's presentation, we will answer your questions at that time. If you have a question that is the same or similar to a question that has already been answered, we will not ask your question. If we don't get to your particular question during this webinar, rest assured that we will try and contact you afterwards to answer your question. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Dean Huang of the Rosen College to get the webinar started and introduce our presenter. Dr. Huang?
Thank you very much, Susan, for your kind introduction. Hello, everybody, Rosen College friends and staff members. Today is July the 10th, Friday. It's a rainy day in a sunshine state, but I think we are doing well. I hope that you all are doing well. This is the fifth seminar in a series of seminars we offer to our alumni and industry professionals during the summertime. Even in the face of a global pandemic, with a shift to online teaching, we at the Rosen College have maintained our exceptional teaching standards, research standards, and continuing education offerings to our alumni and industry as we prioritize providing the best experience and value to our students. This expertise and leadership in the hospitality industry is on display in a summer series of Rosen College Research, Recovery, and Reskill webinars. So thank you all to our alumni and industry friends who joined us for the first 4 events. We hope that you will continue to participate throughout the balance of the summer programming. Whether you are a Rosen College of Hospitality Management graduate or a UCF alumni working in the hospitality industry, you will benefit from this series. The remaining topics are listed on our website, but as we emerge from this crisis, the content may vary to stay current with the industry initiatives and trends. So with that, I would like to introduce the presenter for today's seminar, Dr. Arthur Huang, who is Assistant Professor at the Rosen College of Hospitality Management. The topic today is very fitting, entitled Leading Through Technology, Innovation, and Changing Management. That is basically what we are doing right now. So with that, Arthur, please enjoy your presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Can you all see my screen? It is a great pleasure to be here. I hope you all stay safe and healthy. My name is Arthur Huang, Assistant Professor from the Rosen College. I'm also affiliated with the College of Engineering and Computer Science. My main area of research includes data analytics, digital economy, social, economic, and behavioral and psychological impacts of artificial intelligence and future of work. As COVID-19 is still rampant across the US and worldwide, individuals and organizations are adapting to be more agile amid and post-COVID-19. So to this end, I'm presenting on this topic on leading through technology, innovation, and change management. My goal today is to help paint a fuller picture of how changes are happening both at the organizational and workers levels. First, I would like to acknowledge my research team members who have contributed to this study. Since the outbreak of COVID-19, we started several research projects on organizational adaptation strategies and workforce redevelopment. We particularly focus on small to medium businesses and freelance workers who are significantly impacted by COVID-19. We have a number of data companies that support us. If your organization has interest in working with us team, please feel free to reach out to me. It goes without saying that no sector has been hit harder by COVID-19 than the hospitality tourism industries, with trillions of dollars of human capital, physical capital, and other resources became idled or even destroyed by the crisis. On the other hand, no sector has more to gain from reinvention. The business restructuring during COVID-19 pandemic is a harbinger of more fundamental transformation driven by powerful digital technologies like artificial intelligence. The unemployment rates for the tourism and hospitality industry in the US after the outbreak of COVID-19 reached over 30% in April and May, plus a multitude of workers being furloughed. Travel and tourism accounts for 10% of total global GDP. With this pandemic, more than 100 million positions worldwide and about $2.7 trillion of GDP have either disappeared or at risk as a result of the crisis. A recent survey conducted by the American Lodging Association in May indicated that close to 90% of hotels were forced to lay off or furlough workers due to a pandemic, and 2/3 of them are operating at a less than 50% of pre-COVID-19 staffing levels. Their study also concluded that hotels were one of the first industries impacted and will likely be the last to recover. That creates some tremendous challenges for businesses and workers. This chart shows a change of hotel demand in Florida. Even with the business reopening policy, we are still around 50% down compared with the same period of last year, with many events canceled and travelers having high perception of risk. This chart further shows the change of revenues for the hotel industry, which is consistent with the trend of demand. The hospitality and tourism industry have hit headline since the COVID-19 outbreak. Significant structural changes on jobs will likely occur, bringing uncertainties to many workers. But it also creates unprecedented opportunities for productivity gains, wealth creation, and shared prosperity. So today's agenda includes 3 parts. First, I will talk about business adaptation strategies through case studies. Second, I will talk about technological trends in the post-COVID-19 world. Lastly, I will discuss relevant personal adaptation strategies in this context. First, business adaptation strategies by industry. For the entertainment industry, on the theme park side, since reopening on June 6th, the Universal Studios Orlando has adopted a series of new practice and new procedures to prioritize social distancing and reduce human contact. Disney is also geared up for a safe reopening this week. Parks and hotels require a temperature checking. If you are staying on a Universal Studio hotel, you will have your temperature taken upon entry. If you are under 100.4 degrees, you can get a wristband and won't need to have your temperature taken at the theme park for the same day. They also reduce the seating capacity in the shuttles, rooms, auditoriums, and frequently clean and disinfect surfaces throughout the park. Furthermore, the implementation of the virtual line systems enhances both safety and guest experience, allows the attractions to run safely, and reduce the number of staff needed. Attraction operators can scan and check the QR codes for the virtual lines prior to entry. In another study we conducted, we found that the leisure and entertainment industry is the most hard hit by COVID-19. And this chart shows the cell phone traffic signal inside Universal Orlando. Over time, you can see that the signal traffic has down by close to 80% after reopening. After reopening for a few weeks, there are reports that Universal Orlando laid off a number of employees working inside the park. It suggests that it's still a challenging time for theme parks, and such effects will likely continue for an extended period of time. During COVID-19, individuals and organizations are still doing their best to connect, inspire, and encourage each other through internet and social media. There have been very well received virtual concerts and Olympic Day workouts online. Many conferences also went virtual with much lower operational costs. Here is a full XR conference in Seoul, South Korea in March, where speakers and attendees were recognized through their customized avatars made specifically for the event. And this event hosted over 1,000 attendees from 55 countries. As technologies have made breakthrough in reducing the perception of distance and boundaries, the unintended consequence could be that if people start to get used to these virtual events, they might be less likely to come back to the traditional venues. For the hotel industry, similar disinfecting procedures have been adopted. Examples include adding new signs and labels on the floor, temperature checking, requiring employees and guests to wear masks, rearranging the lobby, and frequently cleaning surfaces, etc. In some hotels, housekeepers use handheld spraying guns to disinfect the rooms. In Switzerland, a certificate was created for a new operational department, which deals directly with guests and visitors about health and safety in hospitality management. Such kinds of certifications for hotels could help reduce guests' perception of risk and can handle public health crises with precaution and in a more proactive way. Other hoteliers have actively adopted new technologies to cope with the pandemic. A hotel in Hong Kong used a robot to deliver food and drink to over 100 individuals who traveled from overseas and quarantined in the hotel room. UV light moving stations are also deployed to disinfect the rooms, which have great potential for adoption on cruise ships. For restaurants, before the reopening, CDC and restaurant.org published a series of recommended guidelines on restaurant safe operations, from cleaning, disinfecting, creating social distancing, pickup, and delivery. While having to reduce indoor capacity, many restaurants are getting creative as they reopen. The Inn at Little in the state of Washington added mannequins dressed in 1940s clothing to as decorations. Digital menus and disposable utensils are also provided for guests. Here are some other creative implementations of social distancing across the world. It seems that if done properly, safety measures can enhance guest experience. To reduce the human contact, a guest can scan a QR code to bring up a menu on the phone from which they can place their order and make payment. Restaurants are also utilizing the existing reservation software such as OpenTable to schedule customers' pickup times and for scheduling delivery. So here's a video about contact-free restaurant experience. It has no sound, so just watch. Specific requirements and comments can be written on the app as well as the person makes orders through this app. And this can be a game changer for restaurants' operations. To maintain businesses, restaurants now depend heavily on takeout orders. Food ordering and delivery apps such as Grubhub, DoorDash, and Uber Eats become popular. In particular, DoorDash has over 300,000 restaurants across the US sign up with it. However, there's a cost that comes with it. Third-party apps charge about 30% above of the sales revenues on average, which takes a large portion of profit margin in food services, especially for small to medium businesses. This is a figure posted on Facebook showing that this restaurant gets less than half of the total revenues. The relationship between apps and restaurants long have had conflicts, but has intensified during COVID-19. Given the additional cost on implementing safety rules, reduced capacity, and extra costs from the apps, many small restaurants decided to close permanently because of low profit margins. In addition, many small restaurants have limited capacity in creating web services or maintaining their website. The COVID-19 pandemic necessitates the ability of adapting to the digital economy for almost all businesses. There are also great survivors. La Glacerie, New York City is a famous Mediterranean restaurant in Brooklyn, New York. Instead of using the third-party apps, they fully take advantage of their website and use the email list to contact their frequent customers. Almost all online orders are done from their website, and the owners use restaurant servers to deliver food to homes with decent comeback businesses. Furthermore, some restaurant owners are choosing to change their restaurants into small hybrid grocery stores. They offer their wholesale stock and supplies alongside to-go foods. The rationale is that restaurants have excessive stocks of things that are hard to buy in traditional grocery stores, and guests can reduce the number of trips by stopping at one place for what they need. For the second part, I'm going to talk about technological trends in the post-COVID-19 world for the tourism and hospitality industry. First, COVID-19 will likely accelerate automation in various settings. To name just a few, this picture shows a robotic dog patrols a park to monitor adherence to social distancing rules in Singapore. Through the image processing technologies, these robots, accompanied by a park officer, will alarm when individuals are in violation. Park officers can intervene if needed. Its recorded message reminds people of maintaining social distance. Cameras installed on this body will help estimate the number of visitors in the park. The officer said these robots cannot recognize individual faces and won't collect any personal data. Here is another example of robot with UV light, which can automatically disinfect a 4,000 square foot space, a warehouse, in just half an hour in Massachusetts. New technologies will continue to shape the landscape of future work at a fast pace. Second, COVID-19 will lead to new design of space and services. This hotel in San Luis Obispo in California shows an example of a blurred line between indoor and outdoor areas, taking advantage of a natural lighting and fresh air. The idea is to create spaces that can evolve with the realities of public health as well as the guests' needs and preferences. In addition, there's a greater interest in building flexibility into spaces so that spaces can transform over time to ensure both social distancing and a need for human-to-human connections. Third, XR technologies will be increasingly improved and adopted in entertainment and marketing. Here, an example of a virtual golf event, which is applicable to different forms of sports entertainment. Also, Visit Orlando has used a virtual reality and 360 degrees cameras to create a virtual tours of almost all major attractions across Orlando metro area. The bottleneck with XR technology right now is the transmission speed for real-time images with large number of pixels. If new breakthroughs can be made in this area, we'll see even more live applications of XR technologies in the tourism context. Third, app-based communication and transactions will be further integrated into current services. The majority of a brand name hotel chain have started to develop their own apps for quite a number of years, and COVID-19 will likely enable them to further invest in improving the functions of these apps on their properties. Here's one example of a four-season hotel app, which accomplishes almost a front desk person's job duties and more, and probably in a more efficient and responsive manner. After COVID-19, Four Seasons have encouraged the guests to use the app for services as much as possible. And this is the advantage of affiliate with a major hotel chain, which has more financial resources and technical know-how in adopting these technologies. There are also videos on using robotics in the kitchen. So here is one example. A robotic system is designed to cook Chinese food. So there's already a shortage of chefs across the country. So hopefully for customers, the robotic system will provide a faster and cheaper food service experiences and with better quality, hopefully, probably no hair in the food too. Lastly, I would like to talk about the implications on jobs and personal adaptation strategies. I have several propositions about the future of the hospitality and tourism industry. First, the size of employment in the hospitality and tourism industry would take a longer time to recover than most other industries, and it will likely not go back to the prior pandemic level. Second, automation and computerization will come at a faster pace. Workers with greater diversity in skills, especially on knowledge and skills in emerging technologies, will be in greater demand and probably receive higher pay than now. Both challenges and opportunities coexist for current workers and businesses. At a personal level, here's my advice. First, invest in micro-credentials and diversify skills. As combined job duties will become popular and common, it is important to be agile and flexible in carrying out different job duties. This is where the lifelong learning concept kicks in. Second, there will be greater demand on data analytics skills and technology-related skills. The Rosen College has started a master's degree in travel technology and analytics, which aims to fill this research gap. In addition, there's a lot of online data science and analytics programs that everyone can take advantage of with a much lower cost and greater flexibility. I encourage everybody to check it out. Third, sharpening soft skills and ability to interpret data and make decisions. AI and machine learning, while increasingly important, have limitations in connecting with people emotionally and make decisions where there are no prior data or experience. Soft skills are more difficult to be replicated by AI. I encourage all of you to invest in your soft skills and ability to interpret data and make decisions in complex contexts through experiential learning. Fourth, identify a viable path for gradual transformation to jobs that are less likely to be automated. Find a mentor, take advantage of unprecedented online learning resources to equip yourself. I would like to share that I'm teaching a new graduate level course online this fall, Smart Travel Tourism. If you like today's content, more in-depth analysis about what I discussed today will be included in this course, including technological trends, business adaptation, and the future work. Contact me if you're interested. Lastly, more than ever, the world needs leaders who can make a difference in all walks of life. Despite the uncertainties and hardships we have to live with, there's so many opportunities for us to learn, adapt, and turn activities into positive impacts on ourselves and our community. I still believe that the best is yet to come. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Arthur. That was a great presentation, a lot of data there to digest. So let's get started with our questions. We have a question first from Javon. Do you think the convention, meeting, events, etc., will ever recover financially as renowned events aren't cheap? Do you think companies will be apprehensive on planning events? And do you anticipate a spike of events in the fall, or is this going to take longer?
That's a great question. I think it has to do with a lot of, the current spread of a disease. If able to flatten the curve, and it seems that the data in these recent weeks in Florida is getting better over time, and then consumers' perception of risk will go down a little bit, and that will help them recover. But again, the impact of those kind of virtual conferences and meets may have long-term impact on consumer behavior. If a lot of businesses figure out that I can still do this virtually without sacrificing much of a quality of interactions, then given that it's a much cheaper way out, they may prefer to do that way. So for a lot of the convention businesses, I think they also need to consider if there are other ways they can maintain their businesses other than the traditional way of having people come over all at one time. So this is something that really worth investigating from the consumer behavior, business behavior, and also the operational cost perspective.
Okay, we have a question from Audrey. Personally, she believes that service models will greatly change in the restaurant industry with positions like servers being eliminated. What are your thoughts on that?
As I indicated earlier, because these positions are already being damaged by COVID-19. And a lot of the food services become like a delivery based services, and there will be a change of a little bit of the social demographic too. If you look at people who currently work in the restaurants, a wide range of ages and gender, right? But if you look at the people who actually tend to deliver on the deliver side, tend to be more younger generations, 20s and 30s. So how do you transform the people who traditionally work as waitresses to become delivery workers, there will be a challenge, right, in doing that. So it's not putting people on the other side of the equation directly. There's got to be some other work that needs to be done to help them. But I do believe that given the penetration of technologies, more and more restaurants might be willing to test those technology out. So.
Well, you mentioned making them delivery workers. How is that going to work?
Like I mentioned, in this case study, I can go back to the case. It's a case in New York that they use their own website. To like email list to contact customers. And then the people who traditionally work as a waiter, waitresses, they just now start to deliver food to homes, right? So they keep the current workforce, and yet the job duty have changed from working inside the restaurants to delivery. So that could work in some settings, but it may not be applicable to all restaurants and other related food service industries.
Okay. We have a question from Azaria. How do you think American populations would respond psychologically to something like the robot dog in the park?
That's a very interesting question. Definitely there are concerns about privacy and security. It's probably number one concern. And there's already like Google and Facebook, they have an app on contact tracing, but the Congress has not endorsed that because of concerns about collecting personal data. So you have to show to the public that you are not collecting personal information. It's all de-identified and it's an aggregated level. But overall, I think it's been good, right? Because right now we have seen a lot of people who really are not pay attention to social distancing at all. If you go to airports and outside, I've seen that a lot, and that makes me feel very angry to some extent because you might be infecting others who are vulnerable. So with these kind of technologies, and they can remind people of their behavior, at least hopefully they will follow. So I think the technology definitely can play a role, but we need to play them in a more careful way, especially in the United States, to ensure that you are not collecting personal data or personal information.
Okay. We have a question from Mackie. With all the technology needs that hotels and restaurants will need in this new environment, what do you see for the future of companies that may not have the resources? Do you see an emergence of more third-party companies that can support these mid-level companies?
Yeah, I definitely see a lot more new business models and new, tech companies that can come into the tourism area. So not just, major big corporations like Google or Facebook, but a lot of the new startups, I think that definitely can connect the technologies with the new need in the tourism context and make a profit from that. Of course, they need to build a partnership with restaurants and hotels and et cetera to make a for-profit model for everybody, so that you are not just taking all the profits from restaurants, right? Like you have seen in some of the apps that small restaurants, they cannot afford that. Because I've interviewed several restaurant owners, and they said their profit margin is about 20%, a little bit more. But if you do this third-party app, they take out probably most of it. So this is a big challenge, and how do you address that? In New York City, they have a cap of no more than 15% of the commission fees. So it's for New York City only, because there's so many restaurants and it's very tourism based. So if some kind of partnership that can be built between government and these kind of apps, and also a lot of these small businesses, I think it will be a more shared prosperity for all.
Audrey wants to know, can you speak more to your research on the independent worker, the gig worker?
Yeah, this is a great question. So we actually had a proposal that is ongoing on the reviewed on to look at independent workers' needs, because especially in the tourism hospitality industry, there's a lot of independent workers, and given the hit of crisis, these are the populations that are easily disposable by most companies, and they are most hard hit. So I think for these workers, they need to be especially agile and be aware of the trends and the gaps, so that they know which is the area they should invest themselves in and try to go for those opportunities. Compared with major corporations that provide more systematic training for a lot of workers, these independent workers, they are totally on their own, right? They have to spend money on training, spend money on going to conferences by themselves. So knowing where to invest in is critical. That's one of the areas that we are working on right now, to identify the future trends of different industries and what are the skills that become more and more valuable, and to recommend that to all these workers, especially to independent workers who need some particular help in that area.
Okay. We have a question from Thais, who is watching from Brazil. He wants to know how the companies can enhance the security to motivate tourists to begin travel again.
Oh, that's a great question. I guess we need a group of really tourism experts to answer that question. But my take is that I think if you look at a lot of big corporations, like Universal Studios and a lot of major theme parks, they're actually doing a very good job by looking at the procedure. But I think the key is how to ensure those customers are actually following the rules, right? If you look at recent spike in Florida, we have seen that in our preliminary study, the number of people going to bars and restaurants is positively associated with the number of spikes. So how to ensure that those young people, right, are following the rules, and so that everybody feels safe in order to enjoy the services out there is a big question. So there's also studies showing that social media also play an important role in influencing younger generations. So I think all these different policies should be in place to support that everybody following the guidelines and the rules so that we can reopen safely. But the perception of risk is still there until we have seen cure or a vaccine, which might take a much longer time. So.
Okay, we have a question from Allison. Since most of us are already involved in the hospitality industry, it looks like robots and apps are replacing baseline employees. Will it also hurt our opportunities as we climb the ladder into being executive directors or general managers?
In general, I would say no, because if you look at all these major important leadership positions in small businesses or small companies, they deal with complex decision-making processes, right? How do you work as a team? How to inspire people, increase the morale of employees, know which area to invest in, etc. All these are very complex decisions that be hard to be replaced by technologies. Okay, so technologies can provide data for insights, but we still individuals who understand the data, understand the context, and some contextualized issues in order to make informed decisions. So I think for all these workers working in the industry, the future is still bright. Right? We may have seen maybe a little bit reduction of certain jobs, especially the frontline jobs, but I think there's still a great need for leaders in those positions, in these organizations, to put technologies and people together so that we can create a shared prosperity. So overall, I'm very positive about the future. But for workers, yeah, it takes some learning curves, and you have to invest in lifelong learning in order to get there.
Well, we spoke a lot about the hospitality industry. We have a question from Azaria, who wants to know how this will affect the retail industry as they're working to recover as well. I noticed that a lot of retail industries right now are having Black Friday and July sales.
Yeah.
How is that going to work for them?
Yeah, retail is definitely another big area that is hard hit by COVID-19. We did a small study in a different paper. We found that retail is slightly better than overall hospitality tourism because people still need to go for shopping, right? But right now, a lot of people also resort to those kind of apps, right, for home delivery and almost everything, right? Just pay a little bit extra and they save some transportation costs and the risk is exposure. So I think that experience might continue to extend after COVID-19 because there's a trained experience. We call it inertia, right? Behavior of inertia. So when you're used to something and you feel it's good, you're more likely to stick to it, especially when it comes to the newer experience, right? So I think retail stores really have to be a little bit more creative in attracting customers. Like I show in the slides, some restaurants, they're getting innovative by taking, do a hybrid model of retail plus, to-go foods, right? Especially for some hard to get stuff like, for example, hand sanitizers or toilet papers, right? When you're hard to get them at a grocery store, maybe if I go to a restaurant, buy something, I see, I can buy a bag of that. So I think retailers also need to be creative and also take full advantage of the digital economy as well in order to be successful.
Okay. A question from Hannah related to the events industry. What short and long-term changes do you predict with how events are conducted? Do you predict impending laws to regulate this, or is it just an individual event by event protocol?
I think that's a great question. I think depending on how the industry develops, I think for a short term, it may still be events by events. And you can see a lot of online events become very successful. I signed up for quite a few in the past few weeks. All these are different conferences and workshops, and it turned out to be okay, right? I don't have to travel to Boston or San Francisco for those conferences. So definitely that might impact how these businesses perceive the operations of those industries. There are even online trade shows these days now. So I think it's going to have a relatively long-term impact on the events industry overall.
Okay. From Carrie, with all the theme parks opening back up next week, do you think there'll be another wave of layoffs once they have brought back the guests in the coming months, based on all the technology that you've been talking about?
Theme parks it is a difficult time for theme parks. We have to admit that, especially for a lot of the high-end guests, that kind of experience will be different because they pay more money for that good experience. Now, because of COVID-19, you have to, you're not offering as many as before. So I don't know exactly how it's going to turn out. We'll see how Disney is going to behave right after they open, and hopefully there'll be no spikes or anything like that. But I have friends who work at Disney and other theme parks, and they have not been called back for work yet. So, we'll see how that goes. We hope that they will, but I think Disney and other major theme parks are doing a very good job, by looking at the procedure in protecting guests and employee safety. It's actually a lot of small, theme parks that are not totally following these guidelines, for a variety of reasons, resources and the level of attention paid to it, et cetera. So I think, a common protocol, a kind of joint efforts are important to ensure safe reopening so that customers will have reduced perception of risks of coming to these places.
We spoke about the events industry. This question from Amanda deals with the subsidiary industries that work with events. How do you think that the move towards virtual events will affect lighting, audio, and video companies that support these events normally?
Well, they will see a reduction of businesses, right? In that regard, as we can see, this is really a ripple effect on a lot of people, right? And multiple jobs that will be tied to the happening of events may be affected. So in the short term, yeah, that we'll see they will be down for a little while, and they have to get creative as well in terms of what are the possibilities of getting more customers. How can you get direct customers? Right now I have friends who are actually YouTubers. They do concerts at home. You'll be amazed. They have all kinds of gear set up, cameras and all that at home studio, and they play concerts and online. So they may not want to invest in, those kind of heavy, those kind of expensive equipments. So can you reach out to a lot of these, individual, home-based or studio-based concerts or other events for businesses? Maybe not that much money compared with major events, but I think if you set up a nice platform where individuals can reach out to you guys, you may still see decent business opportunities out there. But I think the business model has to adapt to COVID-19.
Okay. We have another question here from Arash. How do you think technology will handle contact tracing without violating privacy issues?
This is a great question, right? As we have seen before, a lot of technologies are there, right? Google and Facebook, they all have those kind of contact tracing software. In some states, all the restaurants require all the guests coming in, leave their name and phone number, so that they said they will keep that contact for 1 month, just in case someone gets test positive, so they can inform these people about it. But it's more of a local policy right now. But existing technologies might have issues with the privacy breaching. The new technology like a blockchain or a federated trust framework could come in handy in that regard. Well, there's be encryption of private information on both ends. You need a key to be able to access that piece of information. So there's some promise in integrating that into a contact tracing area.
Okay, Arthur, we have a question about the course you mentioned that you're teaching in the fall. Can you talk about that again?
Oh, sure.
A little bit about the new degree program?
Yeah. So this is part of a new degree program that Rosen College started actually this fall. It's called a master's degree in travel technology analytics. So this course I'm teaching is a requisite course in a degree. We mainly focus on how the industry has evolved over time, especially in the context of AI and machine learning. So we'll look at different sectors and how different jobs and the work duties may evolve over time. Right, there's several trends that we have seen already. The combined job duties, because of reduced staffing, some of job duties will be combined. So one person may handle multiple things right now these days. Maybe front desk at some point, and then maybe work in the kitchen at some point, right? Maybe in the lobby, something like that, or maybe handle the web services. So we'll talk about the diversified skills required over time. We also look at the future of work. What are skills that become more and more important over time? And how can workers in the travel and tour industry adapt to the needs in the future? So yeah, these will be the major chapters that we discovered and discussed in the course. It's a totally web-based course, so if you're interested, feel free to sign up for it.
Thank you so much, Arthur. Really appreciate this presentation today. I learned so much, and I'm sure our attendees did also. This was amazing.
Thank you.
Just to let you all know, we do have another in our series of research recovery and reskill webinars in 2 weeks. We will be addressing financial implications of the crisis and understanding the impact. And that will be in 2 weeks and presented by Dr. Murat Kizildad and Dr. George Ritterstadt. So please check our website for that. We also do offer some professional development courses for small businesses and larger employers. That is also listed on our website, so you can check our website for that as well. We really like to thank you all for joining us today. We hope that you will continue to join us for the Research Recovery and Reskill webinars, and to check back and look at the other ones that we have presented in the past. They're all available on the Rosen College YouTube channel. So please do check in from time to time and look at them and gather the data and use it to your benefit as we navigate this new environment in the COVID-19 era. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Arthur. Thank you, Dr. Huang. And have a great rest of your day wherever you are in the world.